Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to our allotment plot, finding joy in the little things and making the most of our small home. Together we'll learn to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic that lies in embracing the present moment. So let's embark on this enriching adventure towards a more intentional and fulfilling life. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're not new here, then welcome back. On this podcast, we take deep dives into the latest tips and strategies for a healthier and happier life. So today we're going to go deeper on the concept of seasonal living, and in particular seasonal living in relation to burnout. Is embracing the rhythms of nature the key to combating burnout? And can aligning our lives with the changing seasons provide a much needed respite from the stresses of modern life? Join me. We're going to explore the benefits of seasonal living. We're going to uncover all the secrets to a more fulfilling existence. So, are you ready? Are you ready to discover if seasonal living is your secret weapon against burnout? Let's go. Okay, so often in life, I think we're just really attuned to the way we live, which is, of course, as it should be, but we have been raised in a modern world that has torn us away from what is the most natural way of being for us. When I talk about seasonal living, what I mean is living in alignment with the seasons and honouring that ebb and flow of the seasons that exist in the physical seasons within nature, within the seasons of our life, but also how we as human beings can also connect to the ebb and flow of the seasons in terms of nature. And what I mean by that is we cannot exist all the time in this level of working and productivity and just being on the go all the time. And that is how society has taught us and raised us. And so many people like myself are realizing that this is not the way we want to live. This is not what feels most natural and most in alignment to who I am. And the best thing about seasonal living is it is the most natural thing you will ever do, because it's what you were born to do. It's the way humans were born to live, and we're just trying to get back there because society has torn us away from it. So what can happen when you live seasonally is you are able to better honour your energy levels with the natural ebb and flow of the changing seasons, and you will start to feel that you are no longer overwhelmed, exhausted and burnt out. So today I want to dive into the concept of what seasonal living is if you're new to it, and if you're not new to it, I hope there is something you can glean from it as well. And I just want to dive into how it can be such a powerful tool to combat burnout, because in our society we live like it's an eternal summer. We live on the go, being productive all the time, and then we burn out. And when you actually align yourself better with the seasons and nature, and that doesn't necessarily, if you're not a nature person, it doesn't mean you have to suddenly spend an abundant time in nature. It's just noticing nature, noticing what it does. And it can be an incredible tool to stop you feeling burnt out when used in the right way. So let's just firstly dive into the concept of seasonal living. So seasonal living, like I say, is aligning your lifestyle, your habits and your mindset with that of the natural seasons. And what you will find when you look into it and just start to understand how it works is that it feels the most natural. And I've had guests on this podcast before, and we've spoken about seasonal living or slow and simple living as well. And it always comes back to the same thing, that once you dive into it and once you realise, how you can live this way and how natural it is, you almost say to yourself, like, it's so simple. Of course, this is the way we're supposed to be. But like I said, the way society has evolved and the way we are, kind of pushed towards always being productive, always hustling, working hard, working harder. It has torn us away from that sort of natural way of being. And so seasonal living is just getting back to that and just really aligning ourselves with the natural rhythms of the seasons. And so when you start to look at the seasons and you break them down through the year, you can sort of see a clear definition of how things sort of run when it comes to nature. And so we'll start naturally with spring. Spring is a time of renewal, of rebirth. It's like the world is waking up again after the coldness of winter. You've got the trees coming to life again, you've got animals coming out of hibernation, and that can be mirrored in our own lives in terms of, waking up again after the winter, feeling a period of renewal, a fresh start, time to start again. For many people who live in tune with the seasons or follow the wheel of the year, spring is actually the time that they would consider their new year. And it's funny because before the current calendar was introduced, the beginning of the year was actually in the spring. And when you think about that and you think about the way we feel in the spring, it makes so much sense. And the thing with seasonal living as well is a lot of people might be thinking, well, how do I do that? How do I do that? And the thing is, you're doing it all the time, but what you're actually doing is pushing through and ignoring those natural cues. So what I mean by that is you are trying to live, not through any fault of your own, by the way, because it's just the way you've been conditioned and raised, and we all do it, all of us do it, and we basically push through the times where it feels like things are a little more trickier, a little harder, particularly winter. We're a little more lethargic and tired, and we don't honour that. We don't honour the ebb and flow of the seasons. We are expected to carry on and push through and just exist as if we are on top form all the time, and that is how we end up getting burnt out. And it happens to all of us at some point. We get burnt out, and for many of us, we might end up getting burnt out frequently. And it's because we are not able to sit in alignment with what is the most natural to us. And so, spring, like I said, that time of rebirth and renewal and starting over and feeling like we're ready to, go again. We're starting to get more daylight. The sun is shining a bit more, and we are honestly just starting to feel like we're coming back to life again. And then you move into summer, where you are at your peak. And that's why the world wants us to live like it's an eternal summer, like we're at our peak all the time, and nobody on this planet can live as if they are at their peak all the time. That is how you burn out. You cannot live at your peak all the time. You have to honor it. If you are going through periods where you are, at your peak, and then you're frequently burning out, then something is out of alignment. And it's because you are pushing yourself too hard. And this comes up time and time again because, obviously we all have a life to continue to follow. And things like jobs, parenting, outside life, it doesn't honour the ebb and flow of the seasons. We don't have jobs where, we work at our peak through the summer and we're allowed to be a bit slower and a bit more lethargic in that area through the winter. It doesn't work like that. We have to be at peak performance the whole time. So that's an area that it's a non-negotiable, and we can't change that unless we would have a very, very understanding boss. I think we would all work a lot better if we could actually ebb and flow like that, but it doesn't work out that way. So seasonal living, while I think is, the most natural and best way to live, we have to do it by acknowledging the things that, or the areas at least, where maybe it's not always going to be possible. And that's fine, because when you have an understanding of it and when you acknowledge that, you're better able to cope with it as well. And so, through summer we're actually at our peak, and we socialize a lot more, and we get more daylight with more time outside, and we just feel more extroverted. Maybe even us introverts feel a little more extroverted in the summer. And not totally, but there's that air of being a bit more outgoing, a bit more alive through the summer. And then we move into autumn, which is where we're at now, and we start to feel that pull to slow down, and this pull that we are preparing ourselves for winter, just like nature prepares itself for winter. Just like we see the squirrels collecting their nuts to see them through the winter, and we see animals preparing themselves for hibernation, things like that. We, on a different level, are doing the same thing. We feel the pull to slow down and to simplify things. We are maybe not booking as many things in the calendar as we did in the summer, or we are spending more time looking inward and being more introspective, or maybe we are reflecting on what's already passed for the year, and maybe even looking ahead to winter. I always feel like autumn is my favorite season, but it does come with the burden of thinking winter is coming, and it's just a time where there is a long period ahead of us that is going to be colder and darker, more miserable. Yes, we've got Christmas slap bang in the middle of that, but then it's a very big drop off the other side when we are suddenly plummeted back into the darkest, deepest depths of winter again. And then as we survive through the winter, then we come back round to spring, where we start to feel more awake and alive again. And when you can honour those ebbs and flows, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be across every part of your life, because it's not always possible. We still have to work as hard on December 21st as we do on June 21st, and they are very, very different energies. But when you can align the rest of your life around that, you will start to feel like everything is a bit more manageable. And these things, they are non-negotiables, like a job, keeping roofs over our heads, things like that. They are non-negotiables, but we can still do those things. We have to do those things, and we can still live in alignment with the seasons. It's just figuring out how to fit that around what we do. And so, I'm very lucky. I am very, very lucky. So in our home, my husband, he does have what we would call a standard 9-to-5 job. He is very privileged in the fact that he gets to work exclusively from home. So there is a bit more of an easing into the day. He works standard hours, and is very busy with his job, but I feel like the before and after, because there's no commute involved in that, other than up and down the stairs, we don't generally see him at all during the day unless he pops down quickly to make his lunch. We're often out and about anyway, so he's working, we're doing our thing, but I do find that we are very lucky in the sense that because he doesn't have a commute, we can have a bit of a slower start to our day and ease into it a little easier. And also on the other side, when he's done work, then he's done and he's straight home, and we're into sort of like a late afternoon / evening routines and things like that. So however, my job is very flexible, and I feel like I very much ebb and flow through the seasons. Or I try to, at least. My job is very creative, and so sometimes I will absolutely find a spark of creativity, and I've just got to go with it. And it's annoying when it can be interrupted, or I can't actually get to doing it because maybe I'm with the kids and my husband is working, and so I have to let that buzz of creativity just subside. And anybody else that works in a creative role will know that that's really difficult. You can't just be creative on command. But yeah, so you've got that sort of seasonal aspect in how it ebb and flows, and how you can pretty much ebb and flow with that. And I think when we live like we do in this very sort of modern, fast-paced, eternal summer full of productivity and hustle and bigger and better and bolder, when we live like that, we are more likely to be burnt out. And I think we can even burn out when things aren't quite in alignment, even when we try and live seasonally. Being burnt out is a key indicator that something somewhere isn't working. And I've had many conversations about this with people over the years, and everybody goes through periods of burnout, but I feel like I'm in this place now where burnout only really happens if something really big and very unplanned happens. And these things happen in life and you can't avoid them. You really can't avoid them. But I seem to have found a flow where, I live very much in alignment with the seasons. I try and keep things as slow and simple as possible while still, negotiating the non-negotiables. I'm able to work and run a successful business and do that without being burnt out. My work has never burnt me out, never, and I'm very lucky in that. It doesn't burn me out because I am really intentional with it and very mindful about how I execute it. I don't spread myself too thin, but also, I know what needs to be done to be able to run my business. I know what the non-negotiables are there, and I just have to find out how I can fit those in and make sure that I can get that done. And so I would say my work life is probably less of a non-negotiable in the sense of, like, if you're listening and you have like a standard 9-to-5 job, right? I have a bit more flexibility in that. If I don't work, well, I don't get paid though, because I am self-employed. So there's all of those things. Like I said, we live in a very fast-paced culture, and it's this modern, always-on culture that contributes to burnout and stress. And it's just about finding ways that we can step back from that. And when you live seasonally, it really offers this sort of counterbalance to the demands of modern life, because it really does encourage a slower pace and just a more intentional approach to living. And so just to sort of explain, I guess, a little more about why seasonal living has always been at the crux of everything. Throughout history, this is the way societies have naturally lived, and particularly people who would be involved in agriculture. Agricultural societies have always naturally lived in harmony with the seasons due to the reliance on farming. So, it's very much like this. And I even feel it on a very, very small scale in terms of having our own allotment. It's another area where I can very much see the seasons at work. So, again, we'll start at the beginning of the year. We'll start in January. I don't generally go to the allotment in January and February. Maybe if I have a project that I need to do, like one year we moved the compost heap, and another year we went and did some clearing up and building stuff. But although I will sort of pop in on the allotment during those months, sort of December, January and February, I'm generally not there doing anything of any importance. But by the time March, generally sort of later March rolls around, for me that's a time that I really start being more sort of proactive with the gardening at the allotment. And so that will include things like clearing up, composting, digging things over, and just starting the preparation for growing season. I will be in the greenhouse and I will start to start sowing early seeds, and that will continue for many, 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 many weeks. Seeds and little seedlings to plants, to planting them out by the time the weather is a lot warmer, usually around mid to late May, but sometimes into June as well. And then throughout June, July and August, it's very busy in terms of just maintenance. So I always feel like my busiest season really is sort of like the spring and early summer, and then we're just sort of in maintenance weeding mode late August, September time, harvesting and getting everything cleared up and put away for winter. And then, you know, usually by the end of October, I generally am not going anymore, because there's nothing left for me to do, and I've bedded things down. And so I see that seasonal ebb and flow even in that, very busy sort of spring and summer, slow into autumn, and absolute rest through the winter. And so I know some people do continue to grow winter crops. For me, it's not a priority at this time. I actually appreciate the rest and I honour the rest, and that's super important for me in terms of living more seasonally. So, within agriculture, people have lived like this. Our ancestors lived like this, with the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun. We live in a world where when the sun sets, we turn the light on. But our ancestors would have actually gone to bed with the sun. And, once you start diving really deep into this area and you understand like how beneficial the sun is, how the light of the sun, the colours of the light of the sun create different reactions within your body and within your eyes. For example, the colour spectrum in the setting sun actually produces melatonin in your body, which prepares you for sleep. We interrupt all of this by putting the light on and going on a computer, watching the telly, scrolling on our phones. We interrupt that, but that is naturally how it would be. And that's just another key indicator of how we are designed to live with the seasons and with the sun and the natural cyclical nature that occurs both daily, monthly, yearly, seasonally, in our life. So that's really interesting. So many people are myself included, are very much able to include many seasonal living practices even in like a modern day setting. So I've explained a little bit about how we live. We try to get adequate sunlight and get the right sunlight. I always try and get sunlight without my glasses on, in the morning before 10 a.m. And then just be out as much in the daylight as possible. Not perfect in the evening. I'm not going to bed at like 4 o'clock in the winter, I'm afraid. But just being out in the setting sun is something that I prioritise where I can. Just being out on the balcony, that's as simple as it is. I'm not going on any wild expeditions, just being outside, just stepping outside my back door and just spending some moments in the setting sun. And trust me, it is a little more difficult when it's cold outside, as is the idea that I am still going to sit out there and have my coffee in the dead of winter. But you can try these things at least. And we obviously garden and we eat seasonally. Eating seasonally is a massive one as well, because you are providing your body with the right nutrients at the right time, the utmost freshness if you are purchasing things locally or growing them yourselves. A lot of things in the shops, even if they're seasonal, they have to be picked well ahead of their when they'd be fresh. So they have to be picked well ahead of that. So they're not perfect. For many, it is the only option. So that is better than not following the seasons at all. And just remember as well, just think about your locality. What is available in your locality? For me here in the south of England, I've said this before in this podcast, I'm unlikely to have grown a banana. That's not my climate. And so that doesn't mean I don't eat bananas. As with all of this, nothing is perfect, but just doing our best. And we also, can practice seasonal rituals, such as, living better in alignment and having a different maybe rhythm for our day and our lives throughout the different seasons. So, for example, that might look like getting up earlier in the summer, because you are more awake because the sun has been risen for a while, whereas in the winter it's difficult, it's cold, it's darker, and it's difficult to get out of bed. These things are not always going to work for all people, because we keep all different schedules, and it's not that easy to just be like, oh, well, I'll spend an extra hour in bed in the winter, because we've got to get up and go to work and get on with our lives. But, you can implement some of these things where you can. And so when you live this way, when you are better able to incorporate these things into your sort of daily life, or it doesn't even have to be daily, but just embracing what each season has to offer and understanding how your body feels through that season. And I said earlier that we feel this way anyway. It is the natural way of being. We all feel more tired, more inward, and more lethargic in the winter. But society makes us push through that, and that's where we burn out. And so we're already doing these things. We're already on a subconscious level, and also a conscious level for many. We know how we feel in different seasons and how things ebb and flow. And so actually it's something that's already ingrained in us. So it's just about tapping into that and finding ways that we can actually embrace that more to protect our own sort of mental health, our physical health, and stop us feeling so burnt out. And there are lots of different ways we can do this. Being aware is the biggest one. When we have awareness to it, then we can apply more things. We still have those non-negotiables, but when we are better able to apply these things, then we can find ways around the non-negotiables in our life to actually connect more with living seasonally. And living slowly and simply, it just automatically feeds into that at certain times a year. I had a conversation with someone throughout the summer, and they were like I've completely fallen off the wagon with slow living. And I was like, it's summer. We expect to live very slowly and simply all year round, but actually, firstly, there are periods of time where it's just not possible. Life will always come at us, and sometimes it's busy. You are not doing anything wrong. It is just going through it, acknowledging it, and coming back out the other side and being like, okay, let's get back to what feels good to me. So awareness is absolutely the first part. Just be mindful of the changing seasons. Think about how it affects your mood, about your energy, your well-being. How do you feel in general? At this point, we're all adults here. We've been through many, 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 many cycles of these seasons, and we have an awareness of how we feel, and we have an awareness of, what we feel and how we feel it and what our body goes through. So just take a moment and think about that, and think about how previous seasons, how you feel in each spring, summer, autumn and winter. And then another good thing to sort of really embrace that is maybe create some seasonal rituals or traditions to mark the changing of the seasons. So in our house, as an example, I always try and make not a big deal, nothing too OTT, but I always make a deal of equinoxes and solstices. So in the summer, it could be something as simple as just like talking about what the day is. So hey, it's summer solstice. That means that this is the longest day in terms of we have the longest day and the shortest night in terms of daylight, and just what that means, what why that was important for our ancestors, what it means scientifically, what the world is doing at that point. And then you've obviously, on the flip side, you've got winter solstice, the shortest day, the least amount of daylight, the longest night. And then either side of that, you've got equinox, you've got spring and autumn equinox, which are equal day and night. So it's just about acknowledging some of those things, and you can have sort of more traditions and rhythms around those. You can sort of create, whatever works in your own house, and in your own family. And creating seasonal rituals or traditions really help mark the changing of those seasons. And so if you follow seasonal living and the wheel of the year, then you're not necessarily following the meteorological calendar. So as an example, the meteorological calendar will say that autumn begins on the 1st of September, and now everybody knows that actually autumn doesn't really start until autumn equinox, which is on the 22nd of September this year. So yeah, you know, it's really just really interesting and really a great way to start aligning your life more with the seasons. And you know, another thing is just like taking care of yourself differently through the seasons, like adjusting your diet, because you know, we don't have the same produce available all year round. I mean, we do because we have access to supermarkets and things that are flown in from all around the globe, but you can't tell me that, you know, the strawberry you picked from like the local strawberry picking place, or the tomato that you just grew, on the whole it tastes a million times better, and it is so much better for you in terms of nourishment and nutrition as well. So actually that's a great way to take care of yourself, is living and eating with the seasons. You can also adjust your exercise routines. I don't exercise the same all year round. And then also, you know, you can change the way you sleep. Your sleep habits can change through the seasons. It's just about finding habits that naturally align with the rhythms of the season throughout the year. And so when you start to implement these things, you will find that you aren't burning out. And if you are burning out, then there is something that isn't right, and you just need to find out how you can balance things better. And I think that's really the most important thing, is just knowing we'll have things we have to do, and you know, those non-negotiables. But you know, for me, like I said, you know, the non-negotiable that comes up the most is obviously work. And you know, I'm very lucky that I can align my business, you know, around my life a bit better, because I am my own boss. And the thing is, you know, I do a lot of stuff. I work really, really hard on what I do, and you know, I really love it, and I really love to share. I love to share on this podcast. I love to share over on my Substack. I like to create. I'm always creating. My mind is always buzzing, and so it is an area that I'm always like mindful that I don't overstretch on. But also, when you sort of step into alignment and you feel like you're in alignment with yourself, with the seasons, it almost becomes just very natural. And like I say, I have never felt burnt out from what I do here or any part of my business. So I guess as well, maybe a really good thing to talk about would be how burnout can really, really affect you. So burnout is more than just feeling tired or stressed. It's this state of emotional, physical and mental exhaustion, and it often leaves you feeling detached, and honestly it is serious. And I think the problem is, like, we just pass it off as like just a part of living, but it's a real problem, and you can feel like you're running on empty all the time. You're overwhelmed, stressed, exhausted, and it really takes a toll on every part of your life. So like I was saying, when you align yourself with the natural rhythms of the year, you have these sort of natural opportunities for growth, for renewal and for rest. And you know, we went through like all the seasons and how things feel different through the seasons, and it's, you know, it's not just me saying it, you know, it's not something that I'm picking out of midair. It's not just anecdotal. There's scientific research to support it, and there's studies that have shown that when you align with a natural rhythm such as your circadian rhythm, it really improves things like your sleep quality, it reduces your stress and boosts your overall well-being. And exposure to sunlight can really, really help regulate your mood and energy levels, and so therefore you know, that's why living more in alignment with the seasons is such a powerful tool for combating burnout. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh my goodness, I can't overwhelm my entire life. How do I get started? How do I do it? And honestly, making the smallest of changes can make a really, really big difference. It can really it's really about just finding out what works for you in your lifestyle. And I always say this about seasonal living and also slow and simple living too, is that it is really unique. It's a really unique journey. It's as unique as you are. And it's really easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle. And what we can do is set some boundaries, say no to any extra commitments, make more time for seasonal activities, and just taking care of ourselves in each season and understanding how we feel. And it's a personal journey, and the best thing you can do is just experiment with different things and find what brings you joy and what brings you fulfillment, because seasonal living should be fun. It should be a source of your joy. It shouldn't be stressful, and it should be about finding your own unique rhythm and your own unique connection to the natural world. So I really hope that was helpful. The power of seasonal living is such an antidote to this hustle, go burnout of the whole modern world. And when we align our lives with the natural rhythms of the seasons, we can reduce this stress, we can improve our mood, and just overall really enhance our own well-being. And it's not about making drastic changes overnight. Start super small. Maybe it might be just spending a bit more time outdoors during the current season, noticing how the season is changing. Pick up a leaf and see how the colours are changing within that. And then go onto Google and find out why that is, because it's fascinating. And it might be thinking more about what you eat and how you can incorporate more seasonal foods in your diet. Remember, every little tiny step will count, and it's not a race. Maybe this season you just start doing one thing differently, and then maybe the time winter rolls around you just take a long nap because it's a tough season, and then see how you feel in the spring. And just slowly and simply, this whole thing is all about slowly and simply. It's of no use if you are panicking that you're not doing it right and then you burn out there as well. That's not what we want. And so I have a free simple living guide. It's packed with practical tips and resources to help you embrace a more simple and seasonal lifestyle. So you can download your copy by visiting my Stan store. That's stan.store/The Slow Living Collective, and you can find it there. And if you want to dive even deeper with me, I have an incredible course. It's called Rooted in Seasons, and it is a step-by-step guide that you can take in your own time, and it will help you dive into the seasons, help you understand why seasonal living is so important, walk you through it, give you tips and help and advice. It helps you integrate slow and simple living into your life as well. It is this massive, all-encompassing course. It is incredible, if I do say so myself. And it really will just help you, really connect with the seasons and make the changes that you want in your life. So if you want to find that, you can find that in the same place on Stan Store. That's stan.store/The Slow Living Collective. And yeah, I look forward to welcoming you there. Don't forget as well, obviously I've got the free guide, see how you get on, and if you have any questions, you're always welcome to leave me comments or hit reply on one of my emails. I am more than happy to talk and help guide you through anything that you are struggling with. And before we end this episode, I want to leave you with a final thought, and that's that embracing the natural rhythm of the seasons is honestly like finding your calm in a world that so often feels chaotic and overwhelming. And it's a great way to reconnect with yourself, with nature, and I think once you embrace it, you'll find that everything just feels a bit more fulfilling. So I'm looking forward to hearing how you are choosing to live seasonally. Let's embrace this changing of the seasons. It's the perfect opportunity to dive into it and also start living a life free from burnout. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to the podcast, leaving a review, sharing it with friends and family, sharing it on social media. All of these things are so helpful and help the podcast find the people who really need it. You can also find me over on Instagram at The Slow Living Collective. You can also find me on Substack. I write for the Slow Living Collective there too, and the link is theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and until next time, I will catch you in the next episode.